And we're back in. You're listening to another episode of the Fearless Training Raw Knowledge Podcast with your hosts, myself, Alex Garner, where we talk everything training, nutrition, and lifestyle collectively. And as always, I'm back with another phenomenal and very talented guest. And this week I'm in conversation with Mr. Will Crozier. Now, Will is one of the most humble athletes and humans that I know. He's super down to earth. He's very genuine. And he's got a lot of knowledge to share. And we have a really interesting conversation today. There's lots of banter in there. There's lots of raw nuggets. As always, we dispel a lot of myths, and we talk about a lot of the protocols that we use with our clients, with his clients, and unpack a lot of his journey, as always, and the things that he's learned along the way. And Will prides himself on his ability to communicate with his clients, his style, convey clear and concise feedback. And he also specializes in powerlifting competition prep, strength and conditioning training for non-athletes, and coaching development in terms of mentorship. Now, as always, guys, a little bit of housekeeping before we continue. Remember to subscribe if you've not already done so, if you're listening and watching via YouTube. And if you're on Spotify or iTunes or any of your favorite media platforms, then if it's safe to do so, please make sure you leave a rating and a review, as it helps the channel grow and we can get in more people's ears, spread this knowledge, and create a better community in the health and fitness world. As always, guys, if you want more, check out my academy. That's fearlesstrainingunited.com. And with that, let's get into it and enjoy my conversation this week between myself and Will Crozier. We're in. We're at Rabina. We're opposite EMF. We're testing the mic. We've got a bit of ambience in the background, but the mic is a little bit of culture. Good. Right, it is. And you know what? It's good, isn't it? It is culture. COVID culture. People are back. There's all of 10 people in the in the cafe. But I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've been wanting to bring the mic out, and I'm looking at getting, you know, those the headphones.
Yeah.
I was looking at getting those because then you can be out and about with people.
The NFL sideline headphones.
Yeah. You know, people be like, "What are these guys doing?" Oh, mate, you know, we're just we're spectating, mate. Yeah. But, you know, I thought it would be good. And then, you know, you're there, you're in amongst it. Plus, people sort of ask, "Oh, what are you doing? We're doing a podcast live." It's something new. I don't think it's massively been done. Do you know, like, say you go to Melbourne, right? When you go to Arnold's or something like that, or you're down there at a convention, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And they have, like, I don't know who it is, like CFM, and they're in, like, a little box. But they're, like, right there. Yeah. And you can, like, see them and interact. And, like, that does add a different element. And
like
also,
a live radio.
Yeah. Because people can, like, really get involved, and they start to put a name to the face. Or, you know, a face to the.
That was a way bigger
accent.
thing in America. When I went to America, I remember going to the football game, to the college football, and then we'd walk past, like going to the stadium or whatever, and there's like these guys and those guys, and like some of them were podcasts, some of them were radio stations, some of them whatever, but they're all just got their desk, and you can go up and yell for your team in the background or some shit. I don't know.
It's good though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good.
Because it adds that like human element, I think.
Yeah, and obviously random stuff happens, and random stuff's funny, and
exactly, which is good. Well, mate, tell the people we're here. Give as we always do. For those who are unaware, mate, let's start with a bit of a background: who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do it. Because I know you're an incredibly passionate man.
There's two sides I always talk about with this, and that's the coach side, and the athlete side a little bit. So often these podcasts usually go down one of those two, but I think we'll talk about both. Mm-hmm. But the coaching side, I run Nexus Performance. We coach mainly powerlifters these days, strength athletes, but a little bit of sports, a little bit of bodybuilding, a little bit of just people wanting to feel good, feel healthy, do some good stuff, I don't know, whatever, get stronger.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, we're a team of 4, 2 strength coaches, 2 nutrition coaches, and we're all spread out, and we all do things. And then on the athlete side of the equation, I compete in powerlifting. I'm still currently clinging onto the top spot of the 125s in Australia for the all-time records, and the 110s have just slipped out of my grasp a little bit. But that's probably where I'm headed back to next, to take that back, because I'm a sore loser. But
or you're a great winner, right? All great winners don't like to lose, man.
I do have a feeling the 125 is going to be taken away from me very soon by a couple of really good people, so I don't really mind too much. But I'll always be there to push them.
That's it.
But yeah, my best lifts are a 385 squat, a 220 bench, and a 387 deadlift. Not all in the same competition, but
that's impressive. Some serious weight.
Hopefully, so far, the next big goals are the big 400s. So I'm only 15 or 12 and a half kilos on the squat and the deadlift off those. So I can hit the squat and the deadlift 400. There is an extremely short list of people in Australian history at any weight that have done those two together. So that is the next big goal. I want to be the next guy to do that, and by far the lightest, which would be really cool.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add into that, isn't it? Because when you look at the people who are moving that sort of weight,
there's two people. I'm pretty sure, unless somebody's slipped my mind, I'm pretty sure there's two people that have done that, and that's Overdelivering, who's one of the best lifters of all time, in my opinion, absolute king. But it is super heavyweight. I think he's 160 kilos.
Right.
And then Dylan Hellriegel, who's a freak of nature from Perth, who's actually quite young. I think he's 24, but he broke those barriers when he was 23, if I'm not mistaken.
23. Christ.
Sure. Yes, he hit a 455 squat and a 410 kilo deadlift in the same competition. First person in history to do that, regardless of anything, and he did it at 23. So
that's very impressive. You do. I mean, look.
Not a bad lifter.
Not bad for 23. You do.
Still a junior.
That's it. You do have to have a couple of factors playing in your favour, I think, when you're moving those big weights, from what I can understand. You got to have the knowledge, 100%, but you've got to have certain structures, I think, within the body. I don't know how you feel about this, but from what I can ascertain, a lot of people use like genetics and those things as limiting beliefs. But what I've found is that, for example, I'll use a real life example. I've used this before. So a lot of the time, depending on a new client that I get, I like to teach people form first, right? I place a large amount of emphasis on education. Before we load a muscle, we first learn how to load a muscle, right?
Quality.
Exactly.
Quality first.
100%. So I get some people, so for example, there's one particular client came in one day and, the guy's about 85 kilos, he's fairly athletic, he's probably 16% body fat. Guy can't deadlift 100, struggles. But anyway, we move on to the squat and his acquisition's good and he's picking up well and, we're sort of seeing where the strength is relative to form. Guy gets under 3 plates, 140, which for powerlifters is nothing. But for the common person who's not lifted much in his life and only played a little bit of rugby, and I could see this guy had well-developed quads, gets under 140 and moves it like it's butter. And I'm like, have you squatted before? He's like, oh, a little bit. And I'm like, have you done this before? He's like, oh, I've never lifted that way. And it was so, and I'm like, and you could see the biomechanics and you could see the way he got down to squat and you could just think, man, straight away, you're predisposed, man, we could get you squatting a lot impressively.
And also, I don't know who he was at all, but you'll find that a lot of these athletes that come from other sports have had coaches who have taught them to run well, or to move well, or to be faster, or whatever. And to be a top level sprinter, you need really good biomechanics. You need to be able to stay somewhat upright. You need to be able to control your hips really well. You need to be able to control your feet really well. Everything has to move in sync really efficiently, the same way. And it's not the same during a squat, but the body, the same kind of general overseeing principles like that, like being able to brace, being able to hold the hips, being able to, for your feet to be able to move the way that they should do. All those things carry over. So I always find that the people who have a base in sports and have had good coaches for football, the guy who I just mentioned, Odell Manuel, played in the NRL before it, ended up being one of the best powerlifters of all time. Most of these top level powerlifters have a background in something.
It's true.
Chad Wesley-Smith,
yeah,
field, pretty sure he's a discus or shot put or one of those athletes. So although if I say to a powerlifter, hey, running, they'll run away from me, and I will too. Fuck that.
Yeah. But more than 10 reps. What?
Running mechanics or gait or whatever, all this stuff is integrated into the human system. So usually, if you're really good at that shit and you've had really good coaching on that stuff, it'll carry over really good to your lifting. So.
It's true.
Just a quick side point on that, but
no.
The point of your
Today this is what we're doing. It's raw, mate. We're just chatting. Two lads passionate about what we're doing. But to add on that, now that's a really good point. And I've been having a lot of conversations about this lately with other coaches, where, for example, I'll get questions from clients going, oh, when they start to learn a little bit about the movement patterns and different types of movement patterns and progression. Say, for example, you get someone who's never done any free weights and they don't have the acquisition or the coordination, and we go, okay, we might load it through a safer range of motion first, and then we'll progress to more free weight. People go, well, where would you start with someone who couldn't even do that? And you go, well, generally we're going to be looking at the basic, movement patterns of is it a machine? Because it gives us more stability or whatever it might be.
More constraints.
Correct. And I started to, and this was actually something that was highlighted in Ross Edgley's book, the World's Fittest book, and he actually goes through, because, he's, I don't know if you know Ross Edgley.
I haven't read it, no.
Right, so he's the guy who swam around Great Britain. Brilliant. So he's got the World's Fittest book, and now he's got the new one I've got to read, which is The Art of Resilience. And what he does is, because he's travelled all around the world, and he spent time with, your best powerlifters and strongmen in the world, and then he spent time with, your Russian, what do you call them now, wrestlers. But what he's done is he's correlated all the science, he's learned it, even from philosophers, and then he's put it in a way where anyone can read this book and it's really sort of simplified. Yeah. But one of the things he goes in with that book is that the law of body basics, right? So if you're probably the type of kid like myself, well, I know I don't want to speak for you, but I was climbing trees, I was out playing, I was building forts, I mean, the era of the PlayStation was there, but I wasn't really doing that. My mum and dad were sort of like, get out and about, it was like 1 hour, but what I found is people who have had that recreational background, now especially in Australia and New Zealand where it's more of an outdoor culture, like for me in the UK, it's raining, maybe you're inside a bit more, but I find that the kids who have done that are the kids who generally, like you said, or then they go into sport, have these basic motor skills, which they can just generally get under a bar a lot more effectively with a bit of coaching. They pick it up versus someone, and I have
build the base. Yeah, they build a much bigger base.
Right. Well, I mean, and this might be actually a good question for people listening and coaches. I think this would actually be good. Let's turn it into a question. How would you coach someone who has not had that background? What are your approaches? Like, for example, I've had a client who can barely put their hand above their head doing an overhead press with one dumbbell, right? And we've got to take it slowly. Like, we're talking basic warm-ups, we're talking machines, general conditioning, education, before we can even touch or get near a cable or a freeway. Because what we would find very simple, even like a tricep pushdown, like an isolation movement, they can't even have the acquisition to do that. Like, the neuro pathway isn't there. Right?
Well,
so what would your approach be there?
It's a couple different things. So the thing which pops to mind first, and this is just the coach side of me talking, as in like the people person side of me, is just that unfortunately we're probably going to have to reframe this person's goals straight up and educate them as to what they can probably achieve. I get a lot of people, and you would too, in bodybuilding, in powerlifting, they're both very low entry sports. As in, I can walk in off the street, never done a sport in my life, and just jump under a bar and be a powerlifter. I can compete. There's nothing stopping me. I can do a squat, bench, deadlift, I can compete. However, if you haven't had any background whatsoever, if you're 30 and you've never lifted a weight in your life, never done a sport in your life, never done anything in your life, your goal of being the best is probably really tough and probably never going to be there, because a lot of things during puberty and during that time of your life kind of stay that way. Things like flexibility, bone formations, things like that. If you haven't developed it at that stage of your life, it's going to be an extreme process to get it there, and some would argue you're never going to get there in comparison. I'm not saying that people should just not do it and give up. It's just that we kind of need to frame the goals. You're definitely going to still be able to get ahead of most people. It's just education, right? Like you said.
I thought setting expectations, I think, is huge. You've got to. And then, even though you might be cruel to be kind, if we could use that, but then there's no comebacks, and they will have more trust and respect for you ongoing in the future, because they can go,
I'm not trying to say it in a depressing, negative way towards them.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trying to see the light a little bit, or set some stepping stones.
Yeah, rather than sell them a dream and then it never happens, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people do that.
Definitely. And then, as you said, the progressions of exercises. The first, you would see it working in a commercial gym. The first thing that everybody does, they jump under a bar and squat. They pick up a bar and deadlift. They pick up a dumbbell press. They pick up a bent over barbell row. Big basics. We're sold of all this stuff, and that we can regress these exercises and put them in better positions with much less cueing and stuff like that. So using like a goblet squat, elevating the heels, doing whatever we need to be able to put them in a position to achieve the goal without throwing 50 cues at them. Exactly. I think if you have to use more than a few cues, you're doing it wrong. You picked the wrong exercise.
100%.
So we pick the exercise which gives them the most chance of success off the bat. That might be a machine, like you said, hack, squat, leg press, whatever. We're going to teach you that pattern. We're going to teach you how to create the right position, and then we're going to transition you into the next one that's a little bit harder, but still your chances of getting it right are pretty good. Whereas if you went from the person that you said to jumping on a barbell, don't get me wrong, each week will probably get a bit better as I give you some cues and try things, but it's just going to be such a long road, and you're probably going to pick up injuries, and you're going to create bad movement patterns that we're going to have to take away. And so if we use a goblet squat, we use a hack squat, we elevate the heels, we use some other cues. I like to do like the whole PRI type stuff on the ground. So like if somebody, which a lot of my clients do, lack like hip extension, teach them to get some posterior tilt on the ground in like a 90-90 position, which is feet on the wall supine. It's a very safe, very easy position. We're putting you in a position where you have to control less joints, very easy to get right. Once you've got that, once you teach your hamstrings to control your pelvis, they're there. Oh, cool. Oh, there's my abs in the right way.
Right.
Now when we stand up, or now when we go to a next progression, it's like, remember that thing? I just want you to do that and just apply it in this situation. You know what I mean? So stepping people in a very successful momentum type of model.
You're setting them up for success.
Yes.
Rather than being cruel, which and look, I don't think it's a lot of trainers don't mean it.
I started there.
The education isn't there.
When I started coaching people, I feel bad for these people now, but everybody goes through it.
But you'll always look back in 5 years and go, you know what?
I look back every year.
Yeah, exactly, and go,
look back a year ago.
You know what? Maybe I could. But you know what? That's a good thing though, because you should look back and go, I'd improved. Obviously, you don't want to look back and go, fuck, that was borderline dangerous. But yeah, in the early days, there's some times where
things
you're
I could
like,
have done a lot better. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
But yeah, I used to chuck people under a bar, and I used to do all that stuff because in my mind, weight was. Like progression of weight on the bar was the only way of progression.
Yeah.
I didn't know other ways of progression. But these days, stepping them up like that. So there's kind of two ways. We could probably do the whole podcast on this
it's
thing
true.
alone.
It's true. There's that many nuances is to it. But
there's so many systems. You just have to come up with your own model as well.
Well, this is right.
It's another thing that I struggle with is that, and that I've been guilty of myself, is when you go and do a new course, whether it's I don't want to pick on particularly, but whatever 3-letter acronym course that you're going to do and go and apply next to your name on how to move, whether it's FMS or any of that stuff, that shouldn't be your entire system now. You shouldn't erase what you've done in the past and just completely override it and go like, yep, this is the way now.
Yeah, that's valid. That's valid. Just to butt in, because I've seen.
Done it. Everyone's done it.
I was going to say, we've all done it. I've definitely been guilty, especially in the early days.
Yeah.
Because you go, because it's the kind of silver bullet mentality. That is always the rule. That's always the law.
Or it gets results for you, and then you're like, this is the shit.
Yeah, or a couple of clients.
Yeah.
But then you're like, no. Again, it's a tool in the toolbox, and once again, just because I've got a hammer doesn't mean everything is a nail, and it's knowing when to pull those tools out, and that only comes with time and experience, and by going and doing these courses, it just gives you another tool. But we do see a lot of coaches where they go to one course, that course is sort of saying, like, this is how it should be, and then we see that sort of transpire in the gym, and what I have seen from a lot of coaches is that sometimes the value is not there because they focus so much on the details.
Definitely.
Where, for example, like you said before, those basic movement patterns you might teach them on the floor, like define the core, what is it, how do you turn it on? Like you said, posterior, anterior tilt, all these little things that when you are in those positions, you can go, hey, do you know that thing we just did? Well, that's it.
Those isometrics aren't going to build muscle, and they're definitely not going to build strength.
Right, but I see coaches spending hours with their clients doing this, or like doing stability work, and I'm like, hey, if you're a good coach, that should be incorporated, that should be a given. I don't need to spend an hour with you just on stability work.
Stability is a tough. That's a whole other conversation.
Exactly, right? Like, especially if I've said, well, I'm a strength and conditioning coach and this is the goal. Like, yes, there's certain things we need to do, but at the end of the day, if you're just doing hours and hours and hours with that, it's like, okay, maybe you need to relabel yourself and go study to be a physio, or say, like, this is what I'm delivering, not this.
And I've seen trainers in the gym spend an hour with people just foam roll.
It's ridiculous.
So,
it's like,
if that person is that tight, I bet you I wasn't following this person around and following everything they did. I just kind of saw it out of the corner of my eye when I was training. But I bet you that person came back next week and said, "Oh, I still feel tight."
Yeah, of course.
Guaranteed.
Of course.
So, I mean,
it's like you're a coach and you have to understand how to delegate your time by saying, "Hey, look, I might need to give you some homework, or I might need to refer out to another professional here." Again, being transparent, but still giving them the value based on what you are delivering, based on the service. Because I see a lot of trainers do that, and these people actually never achieve any tangible results. Like, they might move a little bit better, but they're doing things where, in my mind, and again, this is just my opinion, from what I've learned, there's no rhythm or rhyme to it.
there's no structure.
There's no structure and there's no progression. And I don't see these people actually getting the value for their time, which is a bit of a shame, especially if, and you're doing these, I think now there's a lot of business models called one-to-many. It's becoming quite popular. Or I am of the belief where one-on-one is still your creme de la creme, and if you're doing one-to-many, it should be in an educational based format, like masterclasses, or you're a group fitness instructor, which then is difficult for someone who's passionate about form, because if you're coaching 20 people in a class and you're getting them all to squat, and someone's doing a squat and it's really bad, you can't just stop and fix it. You might go, "Hey, look," you just sort of go, "Well, instead of you doing something really bad and wrong, I'm just going to give you something simpler," rather than trying to spend. You can't spend 10 minutes with that person.
But in defense of those classes, they can be done a lot better. They can be done. You can go like, "Okay, everybody's going to do a goblet squat."
Yes.
Instead of Les Mills, get everybody to have a little barbell on your back and do like a 3 kilo barbell squat.
Yeah.
That's it just fails on so many fronts. But that's
50
how.
reps wrong. Yeah.
But forget what I was going to say. Forget where I was going to go.
Was it on more about it? Yeah. Was it more about building on the approach?
The structure.
Yeah.
The structure thing.
Yeah.
The model thing. The progressional system. My model is guaranteed different to yours. Everybody's model is going to be a bit different of what you do. But I feel a good task for everybody, and something that I've been doing a lot more in the last year or two is writing it down. Actually drawing, like, I don't know, creating a scenario where, like, person comes to you, they've got knee pain, they've got hip pain, they've got low back pain, they've got shoulder pain, whatever. Like, what are your steps? And you don't have to write it down exactly, because obviously, like, you're not there to test this theoretical person.
Yeah.
But, like, what do? I test passive range of motion, and then I do this next, and then I do that next, and then, like, draw out the system, and then can you teach that to somebody else and have that make sense to them? I found that doing that for me has helped a lot more, because I do it and then I realize that I'm missing steps. And then
so, like, problem solving.
Yeah, and then but it's if I can draw it out in more like a flow charting type thing.
Yeah, you sort of visualize it.
Yeah, and
so
then
you can see the actual process.
And it's a very general overview of it. So if I'm assessing yourself,
yes,
it'd be like, okay, we're going to start here, and then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, and it's going to be different for grandma. But
for sure.
It's the same general system. It's the same flow chart. It's just that the problems and the intricacies within it are going to be a lot different. The goals are different.
That makes sense.
So, like, but I feel like if people can do that, if you as a trainer, coach, or whatever, physio, can do that and go, like, when somebody comes to me, I do this, and then from there I do this, and then from there I do this, and then from there I do this. And
correct.
I feel like a lot of people will be better, because instead of just kind of like
winging it.
Yeah. But I feel like a lot of people don't feel like they wing it.
No, they don't.
It's just that when you start to write it down, or somebody starts to question you, or when you go to teach somebody else, that last one in particular for me, you start to really find, like, a lot of holes.
Yeah.
You go like, fuck, why am I actually doing that?
Well, when you teach, as we teach, we learn, right?
Yeah.
That's what I've, and I'm not, I have not done as many seminars and coaching classes as yourself will. That's something I endeavour to do.
You use those seminars, those courses, and that to plug those gaps.
Correct.
Rather than rewriting the system, like I said.
Well, that's it. And you, like you said, you be taught. I mean, I have, even in the small number of masterclasses that I have ran, and the talks that I've given based on what I've been given the opportunity to be able to do, I've thought, as I've been teaching it, I've been like, hang on a minute, I need to bridge this gap a little bit better. I need to
work out how I can teach it a little bit better.
Yeah, or like I've explained it in my head, but I'm like, I've just listened to that. I'm like, that's confusing as fuck. I'm like, exactly. I need to simplify.
When you write it down, fuck it. I've done this heaps of times.
But that's part of the journey and part of what I find is enjoyable for the progression, because every time, the more you do it, you're sharpening that sword, and every time, you want to make it better. And you want to be like, oh, cool, how can I, like, maybe I can use a better diagram, maybe you can use better analogies, better metaphors, and the more people you train, the more people you can relate to, the more people you can teach it, because you can be like, hey, this is Barbara, I've worked with Barbara, and then you use a real life example, and people, they relate to that, right? Because Barbara's a real person, you know, and you can actually, and there's going to be someone who's similar to Barbara in that room, and then you've got John, right? So you get all these different archetypes, and like you said, you just build more strings to your bow over time.
Different goals, different everything.
I think that's a really good takeaway, especially for a lot of coaches is listening, because like you said, you should have systems and processes, but it's knowing when to veer away from those. Again, goals in concrete, plans in sand. Know when to have a little bit of flexibility, because if you're like, it's like the programs, right? When you teach a client, you probably get this, you know, they'll be like, Alex, my program says this, and I'm like, okay, but remember, it is a guide, not a gospel. So there are times where we must use some critical thinking and go, well, it says 3 sets of 8 at X, right? With an RPX. But I'm like, if you're feeling really good and that is feeling like an RP5 or vice versa, like, listen to the body, man. Yep. Like, just because the program says, I mean, if it said jump off a bridge, would you do it? No, like, you know? So I think, like, giving the client the ability initially, it's like, okay, maybe we need to lean on a bit more structure, but then also having that ability to be able to think for themselves, so then they can get to a point with their program where they go, cool, this is my guide, this is where we're going, but I know when and how to change it based on my week, right? Based on how I'm feeling, based on my health, all of those things, which I think is an empowerment. Otherwise you end up constantly firefighting, as I call it, as a coach, where you're just getting texts, you're constantly putting out fires because you've not given your clients the tools to be able to problem solve themselves, or be able to become better problem solvers over time. So they're just so reliant on you to the point where you're just baby feeding them or micromanaging them.
Yeah,
and
how
you feel about that?
That's a big problem. But that's actually, I probably shouldn't have said that, because it's a whole other route.
No. But look, what I'd love to do is I'd like to, and again with this, I know there's so much in this, but let's touch base. I'd like to dissect your experience as a physique and a sort of what in the bodybuilding physique sport realm initially, and then I'd love to kind of cross over to powerlifting. And what I'd love to do is kind of, if you can correlate some takeaways from what you learned from the physique sports in the early days, the strength sports, and then like correlate the two. I know there's a lot in there, but
there's a lot of lessons.
Let's just see where we go with it, man. Wait, we can always do a round 2 and 3.
So remember, to quickly clarify that, I did a year of physique, as in like the bodybuilding class. I think it was actually called muscle model.
I was going to say,
in A and B.
It changes, and it depends on the federation now.
I'm pretty sure it was A and B back then.
Yeah.
And it was muscle model. But whatever, everyone had slightly different. I competed in a few different federations. So
basically, you're getting on stage and tan, half naked, flexing. And
then there's bodybuilding, which is the next step up, which is poses and undies and whatever that people are used to.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then I'll do powerlifting after that. So I've gone through a few different goals throughout time. So there's definitely been different lessons there. Physique, when I was in those days, I definitely didn't understand things as I do now in terms of lifting, biomechanics, all that different type of stuff. We just did what we were told. Going hard was the answer. And the coach that I had for those comps, that was definitely his approach as well. Looking back on it, he can take some of that blame as well. But I would do it very, very differently if it was today. There would be a much more structured approach where there was more balance involved in life. Because back then it was just go hard, forget the rest of life, forget the rest of everything. I'm going to win these competitions, and that's my one goal of everything that's going on right now.
Sacrifice
Business doesn't
everything.
matter, money doesn't matter, relationships don't matter, social, none of that matters at the moment. It's all get on stage looking the best I can. And that was definitely a bad thing to do, and I'm much better at it these days, and something that I teach people these days. But in terms of the pros that came from it, the lessons that have taught me in a positive direction, I think physique and bodybuilding definitely taught me a lot to how to push, well, kind of what it feels like to rock up at the gym and just, or to want to go to the gym when you just don't, like when you have no energy, when you have no desire to train whatsoever. Up until I did that hard dieting, I wanted to go to the gym. Like I couldn't wait to finish work and go like, yep, it's when I finish work, I'm going to go in the gym and it's going to be fucking awesome and I'm going to love it and I'm going to get a pump and it's going to be fun. And then when I did that, I was like, holy shit, like, I just don't want to go. And this is what my clients, my Gen Poppy clients, like, this is what they must feel like. this is what they must feel. Like they never want to go to the gym. So this is what, like, before that, people would be like, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the best part of the day.
Yeah, you can't relate. Like,
not at all.
Especially when you truly love it, you're passionate.
Yeah.
It's therapy.
Well, this is the best part of my day. What are you talking about?
Right.
And they would say, I don't want to go. And I'm like, what? Yeah, so...
it's hard to empathise with that initially.
But it taught, when I did those dieting, I'm like, fuck, I just don't want to go. I have no energy, no desire. I know that my lifts, there's definitely going to be no PBs. There's going to be none of that stuff.
Takes a lot of takes the cream out of the coffee, so to speak.
A little bit, towards the end.
Especially when you first learn about that, it's like, fuck, it becomes such a chore.
Then rather than the positive side of that, you learn to push through that. You learn to go and do it anyway. You learn, hopefully I had a coach at that point who was pushing me and saying, just go. Whether you can squat a third of what you normally do or whatever, you're just going to get there and do it anyway. Like I said, there's slightly different way I would do it now, but that's the positive that came out of it. On the physique, on the bodybuilding side, it brought a lot of mental strength. And then when it got to powerlifting, that nutrition side of it was fucking easy, because when we had to do like a weight cut for a comp, they're like, okay, this is the hard part. We're a week out from comp and we're going to have to cut 2, 3, 4 kilos. So we're going to go on like a harder deficit and do a little bit of a depletion or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, a week, you know what I mean? Like, I did that for like 6 months, you know what I mean? So like, so easy. All that shit's so easy. Following a plan, even 90%, that's fucking easy as. I've covered all those bases, done that, been there. Whereas a lot of powerlifters struggle with that side of things. So I feel like there's a lot to be taken from that side of things. Another quick one with the training lessons that I can think of just off the top, like you said, there's 1,000, but just the thing that comes to mind with the benefit to powerlifting that physique training had was that you get stronger in a few different ways. You get stronger through skill, you get stronger through efficiency. They're both kind of how your body just gets better at the movements. And then the third one is hypertrophy, getting bigger. And all three require a slightly different training tactic. So when you're training for skill, you're definitely not pushing close to muscular failure. You're pushing close to technical failure. You're pushing to a point where you can still have quote unquote perfect technique and control it with a reasonable amount of weight, but no further. So you're not getting close enough to failure to stimulate muscle to grow. It's all about the movement. It's all about controlling it. It's all about efficiency at that point. Same with the neuromuscular efficiency. It's the same thing, same kind of drill. The quality of the movement is more important than the pushing the muscles to failure. But then when it comes to the hypertrophy side of strength, off season or whatever, if you're doing like a DEP approach, some people do it together, whatever, you need to know what muscular failure feels like and how to push close to that. So a lot of powerlifters lack that ability because they've been focused on movement and skill and stopping when technique starts to break down a little bit, that they don't know how to get on a leg extension and go to the dark side, go to the true
where you're actually creating
where you're one rep
adaptation.
from proper failure,
not mental failure, but almost
not starts to hurt a little bit.
Yeah, mechanical failure.
Because most people, when they get to 1 rep in reserve, they're really 6, 7 reps in reserve on something like a leg extension anyway. You know what I mean? So I feel like being able to switch on that side of the bodybuilding mindset and push when you need to push when the intent is hypertrophy in the program or in that exercise, to be able to do that effectively, but then also to bring out the powerlifter when we get to the competition squats, competition bent, competition deadlifts. So it's like, I feel like it's really useful as a lifter, as a well-rounded lifter, to be able to be the bodybuilder when I need to be the bodybuilder, be the powerlifter when I need to be the powerlifter, and switch between them during phase to phase or day to day or whatever. So yeah, I feel like that really benefits me these days. So there are a couple of lessons. I don't know if you wanted to dive into anything specific.
Well, I mean, I will highlight a couple of things because, I mean, they're great. And again, Will, it's just whatever comes to mind, right? Because
they're just the things that jump out.
It's like when someone says, what's your favourite movie? You can't bloody think of one. But there's always things that creep to the surface. But what I've found in experience from what you just said there is that most successful bodybuilders or powerlifters have usually had a background in one or the other, so it seems, because it builds a foundation. Like, for example, you'll see a lot of bodybuilders, and not all the time, but they're very good and they're very well built, and you sort of ask them and they say, oh yeah, I did the powerlifting back in the day, or I'm big into the squat, bench, and dead, and you think, fuck, okay, maybe that's why you're moving a bit of weight and you've got a well-rounded frame, because by the law of adaptation, it just builds those great movement patterns. It builds a lot of muscle mass initially. You're working with all the muscle groups, etc.
Yeah.
It's not necessary, but it's a great way to train if you can do it, as you know. And obviously, if you love those movements, hey, it's a match made in heaven.
Everybody loves to move a lot of weight. Let's be honest.
Well,
I've never met a bodybuilder who's like, no, I hate moving a lot of weight. I really love sitting on leg extension.
That's
like,
it.
Come on, man.
Well, in my opinion, if you truly love the iron, yeah, you do. You just nothing like ripping some serious weight off the floor in a deadlift, pressing it, like squatting it. It just makes you feel powerful and strong.
Yeah, it's a hard thing because like I think that you can achieve it, like you said, but the best bodybuilders I've met, they love going heavy when the time counts for them.
100%, because that is truly kind of where it transpired from back in the day. That's what you did, right? Taking it to failure. But that was a really good comparison between what you'd learned from physique in terms of like, okay, the mental aspect of pushing, but then also being able to go, well, I know when to push, when to pull back, but you still had that good form and that good skill. And then, like you said, if you're in powerlifting, okay, I've got an accessory movement today. I've done my big lifts. I've hit my numbers. I've done what I needed to do there with the skill, the more strength side of things. But you know what? Now I need to push. It's a low risk. It's a high recovery isolation movement. And you know what? 12 reps hurt. Fuck, oh shit, I actually got 20 out. Man, you know what? Maybe I've been cutting it short a bit. Do you know what I mean? Because on those movements, I feel, you know what? You go to town on them. Once you've got some basic foundations and understanding, you really, the isolation movements, something that I've generally started doing now in my stages of lifting is I'm keeping an eye on where those things are, but not nearly as much as the compounds. On the isolations, I'm generally just taking those to the house. Because, otherwise you're not at this point, you're not going to be growing, you're not causing enough stimulus, or you can go to the myo rep sort of thing.
This is the hard thing in the last couple of years that we had a chat about with the whole, I want to say RP kind of brought it to the surface more than everyone else, was Mike Israel and Renee's Spirization. And it's definitely not their fault. It's definitely a massive positive on the industry, this concept. But I feel this mega focus on volume, training volume, has been, for the vast majority, positive, but then there's a little bit of a negative side to it, there's a little bit of a con to it that they can't help in that rather than people learning to push close to failure or learning to go into those hard reps, learning to get all that stuff, then they just think 3 sets of 10, okay, next week I'll just do 4 sets of 10, but they haven't learned to make that quality volume yet.
Yeah, they're too about the numbers, and we've forgotten about, like always, effort, I always use like Doug Miller as an example. Yeah, he's a bit of an anomaly, right? Top bloke, but he's someone who his
Dorian.
Yeah, exactly. You look at the work ethic of those blokes, and you're like, fuck me, right? Okay, yeah, we're not all in that boat, but the principle there is, you know what? And again, this is just me from my experience. Most of the best bodybuilders I've met, fuck me, I see them train, I'm like, wow, that's scary. Yes. Now I'm not saying go out and try and match that because that's stupid, but you need to work towards wherever your threshold is. So by me training with lifters over the years, I have actually realized that I have not been training hard enough. And I think, okay, yeah, train smart first, like know how to move, understand where your markers are, like don't just go, because otherwise you're just going to end up getting an injury. But then know when, you know what, I got to turn it up a little bit here. And as long as you're turning it up over time and you're making those progressions, and like you said, it's not always about, and I think recently there's been a few good podcasts from a couple of our friends in the industry on this, on how, for example, it's not always about just adding more sets, because
I think Eric highlighted it, didn't he?
He did. It was Eric.
I haven't listened to it, but
they did I think it was an Iron Culture one. I think they did a 3DMJ one. They've done it recently on mass. And they assessed where, for example, when you're going through like these blocks, if you're adding sets, there's a time and a place, but generally we want to be going more RPE, more reps, because otherwise, you add a whole set on there, and as you know, like the bell curve is, all right, we have not enough stimuli or not enough volume, we're not growing. We have too much, we're also not growing. So I was always, one of the biggest misconceptions I had, and I don't know where this sat for you, Will, is that, okay, yeah, volume's king, so I always, no matter what, I need to progress volume, which is accurate, but to the point where now I'm doing that much volume, and I'll tell you, I reckon I've been guilty of it before COVID. I reckon I was doing too much. Because COVID came, I'd done a bit more education, I'd done a bit learning, I did some podcasts with the guys at RP. I actually understood, not from a mechanistic science point, like this is the minimum recoverable volume, or this is the minimum requirement to keep muscle mass. It's actually fuck all, really. It's not as much as we all think. Yeah. But then also going, you know what? To cause hypertrophy, it's not just about making these massive leaps and bounds. It's more about, at that particular time over the week, making sure that the intensity is also paired with the volume. And perhaps I'm making too big leaps and bounds in volume, where the point where I just wasn't recovering. And I found I've got more progression. I personally think my physique has looked better. So's the recovery. I enjoy my training more. The energy's there. And I've actually got stronger and progressed more by tapering the volume back a little bit and playing with the intensity and the RPE and the reps.
Yeah.
And I found that I've been progressing more. So I think, the more advanced you get, like yourself, you're working with some big numbers, you're juggling a lot of volume, that room for error becomes quite small.
Yeah, and the hard part about this is, so if we look at the terms, the RP terms, the landmarks, I forget what all of them are, but minimum effective volume, the maximum recoverable volume, the things like that. It's always a moving target. I think that's what people forget. Yeah, it's not like, 80 is my maximum recoverable volume and that's just a set in stone thing.
Correct.
Because I have a stressful week, I have undereat for the week, I have less sleep for the week, I have more, I go the other way and get a lot better. Now I can handle more volume. It's just different. And also different exercises. Like a lot of my powerlifters will, like for their goal, will end up around in general, like 50 to 70 sets a week, but half of it's quite specific and quite heavy-ish, whereas my bodybuilders are more like 80, 90, 100 sets a week, because they're like a lot more isolation and stuff like that. So there's that, there's their lifestyle that affects their recovery. Their lifestyle changes week to week. So one week that MRV is higher, the next week that MRV is lower. So like I think the concept of minimum effective volume and maximum recoverable volume and these other terms are great, because they get people thinking about it, but we also have to remember that they're moving targets, they're changing all the time. Like if your work is different each week to week, you're on call one week, you do big shifts one week, it's going to be different. And what you said about like learning to figure out what you're recovering from and that the numbers are, that you're getting stronger, that's the important thing. So if you're doing X amount and your lifts are going up week to week, you're getting ahead, you're getting stronger in some sense. I know there's a few different ways to judge strength, adding reps, adding weight, whatever, but that needs to be getting ahead. You can't just like add sets and things and you don't get any stronger and you just magically grow, I don't think. I think we still need to, like I remember in my bodybuilding days, and I didn't know shit, but I would sit on a leg press and would do 200 kilos, whatever, X number. And then the next week we'd add just like a little mini plate or whatever, and that's how we got better.
Yeah.
And when it stopped working, then we go, okay, now we need more, or now we need less in your case.
Yeah.
And then we go, okay, like how can I get these numbers how can I keep getting stronger?
Right.
And then, because remember, strength and hypertrophy it's a dimmer switch.
Yeah.
It's not an on-off. I'm not doing hypertrophy now, and then I change my program, and now I'm doing a strength program. They're not individual things. If you get stronger, you're going to get bigger for the most. I know there are caveats to that, but 100%. For the most part.
Yeah.
And if you get more muscle, if you get more hypertrophy, you're probably going to get stronger. So like you can bias things in a specific sense. Like to become 1 RM strong, I need to do close to 1 RMs to get specifically strong at that particular movement and that particular weight or intensity. Or to do 10s to get bigger, I need to do 10s and I need to get bigger in that. But at the end of the day, me and you are both chasing getting stronger.
Exactly.
I think that
bigger and stronger, right? That's what we all want.
Yeah.
If you're truly in the iron game,
but they come together. I just think that people get this thing where they're separate. And no, you're a strength guy, so like I get it, you focus on strength, but I'm the bodybuilder, so I can just kind of like...
I think that's where a lot of bodybuilders leave a lot on the table. Because especially the guys who I saw the isolation bodybuilders. So the bodybuilders who are, they're the closest they get to a squat is a fucking leg press. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, look, I get it. Like if you can't squat and you've got lumbar issues or say hip problems and you really can't, I'm like, even maybe in a belt squat or a goblet squat, something like that.
But even if it is those exercises, you can still, if you're not aiming to get stronger, you're doing it. You're missing the entire point.
Well, that's it. Because ultimately, a good saying from one of the guys I look up to a lot, and the guy who sort of oversees a lot of my coaching, Josh Hampson, is I remember him saying to me back in the day at Hold Your Own, where I have a tendency to overthink things. People who know me do this, right?
Everybody who wants to get to the top does it,
right? Sure. It's a common trait. And he said to me, Alex, he goes, look, because I'm there, I was doing some squats, I don't know, I think I was talking about, like, I was trying to decipher what rep ranges or something. It was, again, I was missing the forest for the trees. He goes, Alex, he goes, remember, a bigger muscle has a potential to be a stronger muscle, and a stronger muscle has a potential to be a bigger muscle. And he's like, think about it, and let it sit. And I'm like, right. And he's like, okay, yeah, I get it. All right, and that's a nice little way to summarize it up. And obviously, there's a lot more depth you can put into that. But it's true. There's a direct correlation between strength and size, okay, or strength and hypertrophy. But it's knowing, like you said, to use them. It's not on and off. It's understanding when to manipulate one or the other. And I think it's in the muscle and strength pyramids, which we've talked about a lot, because we're both a big fan, is that, hey, let a general rule of thumb, because I know there's people listening now, like, okay, maybe what do I do then? It's like, well, hey, go away, buy those books for a start. But, like, if you're more strength focused, then yeah, you know what, 2/3 of your volume should probably be, depending on the time, and you might disagree with this, of your season, should be between either 1 to 6 rep range, and another third should be in the 6 to 12. If you're more focused on hypertrophy, perhaps 2/3 of your volume should be in the 6 to 12, and 1/3 should be in the 1 to 6. Because as you know, we can still grow muscle, and there's still crossovers, but there may be a time, like you said, man, you know what? I've got as strong as I can with my specific skill with this body mass, but now I need more horsepower. Horsepower is muscle. How do I build more muscle? Well, I need more hypertrophy. So maybe now, yeah, I'm still practicing the skill of strength. We're not neglecting that. You got to get on. But
who's the bodybuilder that you mentioned before? Doug Miller.
Oh, the one that I mentioned before?
Doug Miller.
Yeah, Doug Miller.
Yeah. So
oh, yeah.
There's an example of a guy who's doing 20, 30 reps, if not almost exclusively on every exercise, doing 20, 30 rep squats. Now, I've never met a person that can do sets of 20 and push it as close to failure as what he does.
Yeah, that
so
guy's
this isn't going to be an approach that works for many people, unless you're just insane, I guess.
Yeah, it's true.
For the sake, there's very few people on this planet that I think could take a 20 set of squats to a true RP9 or something, or whatever. But he can do it, and then so again, these are the principles that we're talking about. It's not so much the little details. It's not whether you're on 6 or 8 reps. He's pushing close to failure. He's putting in a lot of effort. He's doing enough volume for him to grow. He's,
well, I would say
his recovery. I'm sure he does.
Well, I mean, it's working, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's the principle is there.
He's strong. He's strong as fuck.
He's overloading the muscle. He's causing enough adaptation for hypertrophy. He's a jagged unit.
He's doing it in the 20 rep range, which for most people wouldn't work, but for him, he can.
Yeah.
Like I said, insane.
He's a beast, man. His training intensity is ridiculous. Well, I always use this story of how I met Nathan Wallace in the squat rack at Ashmore when he had 180 on, which for me back in the day was like, oh my God, 180. And I say, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just going to go for a set of 30. And I'm like, what? And I was just like, and for someone like me, very naive, very young, like when you first start, you're like, oh man, anyone puts 3 plates on in a commercial gym, you think they're a god. But obviously that becomes a lighter weight over time. But yeah, I was looking and I said, why would you? And I said to him, and I looked at him and I remember, and I think he had a client or he had someone with him. And I said, why would you do that? And he goes, because I can, and I want to see if I can. Last time I got 25, and I want to get 30. And part of that, I'm not saying to guys listening, go away and do that, but that was an AMRAP set. He was testing. It was a marker. But again, it's
my
like
lungs would give out well before that.
Well, that's it, right?
That's the hard thing.
It's one of those things where you go, well, it might not be necessary. Maybe it's like, okay, put more weight on and go for a 12 reps. You know what I mean? Like do that, but that was just that given scenario.
Insane.
It's fucking impressive. And then like jumping on the leg press. I remember when I started training at Hold Your Own, and the guys are like, you stalled. Well, I mean, you could change the variation, but why don't you just go for like 20 reps instead of 15? I'm like, 20? 20? What's 20? And they're like, well, why don't you, I do sets of, they were like, I do reps of 30 on here. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, like if you want to fucking get your legs to grow, why not? Instead of putting more weight on now, because maybe your joints are fucked, or maybe you're putting too much stress, or because in Hold Your Own we had the basics, but we didn't have like we've got here. We didn't have a vertical leg hack. We didn't have that luxury where, but again, you don't need it. So the guys are like, hey, you change the foot position. There's like you put bands on, you do that. Like, hey, fuck it. You know what? Take some weight off. Go for more reps. Yeah. Guarantee. Go for, and you know what? Doing those 20 to 30 reps on the legs, I'm not saying it was the only thing, but that definitely helped. It gives you another element to your training. And you've got to work up to that. But fuck, man, the legs grew. The legs grew, and progression starts again.
The effort.
Again, there's another tool in the toolbox, right?
Yeah, you have to get around whatever's limiting you in some way, and whether that is your achy knees or your achy hip or your skill whatever. There has to be a way around it. There has to be a way to keep getting stronger.
Well, speaking of that, I think it's a good little jumping off point for perhaps another key area. And I know you were talking about this on your lives this morning. We look at like injury rehabilitation and prevention. You know, obviously as a powerlifter, man, we all know, even bodybuilders, there's a lot of niggles, a lot of things going on. Can you talk to us perhaps about some of your niggles, your injuries, how you've overcome them, how you sort of maybe now approach it with other people with the experience you've got, and some of those tools?
Jeez. Yeah, well, I've had every niggle in the world, so I don't know where to start.
Of course, yeah.
Wrists, elbows, shoulders, spine, hips, knees, ankles.
Shoulders, knees and toes.
Yeah, exactly. You go in the muscles, you can go down, this is tight, that's tight, whatever. Like, I'm lucky that I've never torn anything. Seriously. So I've never pushed to that degree, so I feel like I've either been very lucky or very smart, hopefully a combination of.
Yeah, and touch wood.
Yeah, and figured it out for the most part. But it just comes back to what I was saying before. It's just about moving efficiently and being able to put yourself in the right positions and skill set. I'm lucky that in my bodybuilding days, this is something that I didn't mention before when we talked about it, but my coach, probably the dumbest approach I could have done looking back on it, but we pushed really heavy quite frequently just because that's what he said to do, so we did. And I know he liked strength training. He was a more strength training biased bodybuilding coach, and we did that, and I got there, and then so I learned to do that really well. And so when I came over to powerlifting, I already had a really good base and kind of moved forward like that. But yeah, it's hard to dive into exactly the nitty gritty of it because there's just so many different facets of it. But it really just comes back to good technique, moving really well.
Well, I guess maybe
all that stuff.
Because you're right, there's a lot of nuances and like there's so many intricacies. To maybe repackage it for a better question, how do you then? You know, we talked about problem solving before with clients. When you've got a client with a niggle or an injury, how do you generally approach that? What does that kind of look like? Obviously, you're going to program around it. You want to sort of see what maybe if you can diagnose it, maybe you refer out. But what does that kind of maybe give us a couple of real life examples?
So to be these days, and this changes all the time because, like I said, the model changes constantly. As I go into another course, I'll learn another thing that I can use to plug that hole or whatever.
Yep.
But these days, it's pretty much going to be somebody comes to me and they have X pain. So it might be your hip flexors are quote unquote tight, or your glutes are inactive, or whatever. Fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
Lower back's a bit sore. I don't know. There's so many different possibilities as to what it is, but I'm going to measure that person's, if I can, online a little bit more difficult, the person's passive range of motion at those joints. So what positions can I get their bones to actually get into at an end range? So with your shoulder, I might measure internal, external rotation, shoulder flexion, all that stuff, and go like, where's the end ranges for them? What is like, what
are you
is
playing
possible?
with? Yeah, what can you actually do within that range?
Yeah, like where can you possibly get to passively? Like what can I take you through? Not what you can control yet. We're not worried about that. Just passive range of motion.
I'm with you.
So I'm going to measure that, and then if that's all clear, then the problem is going to be a skill thing. It's going to be like how you use that range of motion. So if I know that you can, so say your problem within your squat is that you shift, hip shift, or that you get to the bottom and you have butt wink, or you have something common like that, and I measure your hips, and let's just say this never ever happens, but let's just say you have perfect passive range of motion, your hips move very well in all directions, that's happening. It's a skill thing, it's a neuromuscular, it's a coordination thing, it's something that I should be able to cue out, or to give you a squat variation that's going to allow you to do the squat well,
and then build on that movement pattern.
And then build on that, program it in, and you know, it's a technique thing. It's something that should be able to cue you out of it. It's not something that you should have to go to physio for. It's not something that I should need to do any sort of special stretch or any sort of rehab or any sort of stability thing for that matter for. It's just going to be it's a skill thing. If you want to squat well and you've got the hip range and the shoulder range and the range within the body to do it well, then you should be able to do it. And I'm just going to teach you that. It's a technique or regressions or all those different types of systems. If you don't have that well, then we need to work out a way to get that back. So if you're limited in...
Well, say for example, I'll give you a real one, right? I struggle with knee valgus. So I have to work very, very much so. My knees want to come in. When I get to a certain weight and intensity, knees want to come in on the squat. I found there's a lack of activation, what I've been told, what I can ascertain by a glute med, right? And I find if I turn and fire those on, my quads are really tight, loosen those up, it's a little bit better. But that is like a point of improvement for me.
Yeah. So there's a few different things that you just said, which I would address that aren't real. So like activation, for example. When I talk about activation, to me, activation is position. So if we talk about length-tension relationships of muscles, I always use the biceps, and I did it actually in my life. I do it all the time. People are probably sick of me saying it, but it's just the simplest way to explain it. And through an audio medium, it might be a little bit hard. But if my arm is straight, and I try and flex my bicep,
we can all envision that.
It's there, right?
Yeah.
Like I can flex it. You can do it. Like
So
it
arms
works.
are straight now, guys. For those listening, good. Yeah.
It works. Like you can flex your bicep there, right?
Oh yeah, you can tense it up.
Yeah. But it's not great.
No.
Like it's not producing a lot of force.
It's not the massive contraction.
At the other end, here, when your elbow is as flexed as it can be, I can flex my bicep there. Again, not fantastic. It's there, but it's not great. Put it in the middle, and maybe I change the shoulder position as well to put it in the middle of the shoulder flexion as well. And all of a sudden, bicep is there, it's strong, it's raring to go.
So like an isometric contraction.
That's a good position for that muscle to work,
right?
Is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
When it comes to the glutes, same breakdown. How can we put your glutes in the position to work? So the glutes extend, they abduct, they externally rotate the hip, they do all those things.
Yep.
But if you're already biased towards either being short or long, for lack of a better word, they're not going to be efficient at producing that force, the same as the bicep and the arm. So we need to work out a way to position your pelvis, to position your femur, to have control of those joints so that your glutes can stay in an optimal length-tension relationship so that they work very well. So when you talk about activation drills, to me, activation drills are just about putting the bones in the right positions so the muscle can do its job. Because at the end of the day, a muscle is dumb. It does its job. Like, there's no way I can turn it off.
Yeah, it's lazy. It just wants to do whatever it needs to do.
When the joints that it's attached to come closer together, it contracts. When you pull them further apart, it should relax. It should do those things. They're dumb. With the glutes and bigger muscles like that, it's a little bit more complex because there's multiple joints.
For sure.
There's multiple. The glute max itself is like has multiple attachments on different areas. The glute max you can almost look at as multiple muscles itself. It's just that when people wrote anatomy, that's how they wrote it, and we're stuck with it.
For sure.
But yeah, so when I think activation exercises, I think how can we restore this position to the body so the glutes can work the way they should. So that's what we're talking about with activation stuff, right?
Yeah. It's like redefining.
With valgus, I think it's much better, much more. It's a much more systematic way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because when I ask people,
it's contextual. It's
when I ask coaches, like, why do you think that? Whatever. When you say glute activation, what do you mean by that? And they're like, like just feeling it, or just I don't know. Then I'm like, yeah, but what the fuck is that? Like, what is that?
Like, define it more.
Like, how can I improve my activation? And then they're like, I don't know, clams. And I'm like, yeah, but what is a clam? Why does that matter?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. When do you ever do a clam in real life? You know what I mean? Like, it's when you start to ask questions, there's holes in that argument.
Yeah.
So like, and that's what I said we talked about earlier with the writing it down and stuff. It'll help you find holes in your
philosophies,
in your concepts, and that the goal is never to get that model 100% because you're never going to.
No, because there's always
the goal is to improve it. Yeah. So with your valgus, the next thing is like, okay, is that valgus really the end of the world? Is it really a super bad thing? Because
is it detrimental to the point where it's like, oh, you're buckling and you're going to fold in the squat, or is it just a little bit of knee?
It's a hard term because valgus, when the knees come in, that's not necessarily valgus. You know what I mean? If you look up what valgus is and what it means, I'm not going to dive into it because it's just ridiculously in depth and we'll end up having a whole thing on that. But is it really detrimental to your goal? Is it holding you back? Where is that valgus coming from? That is the question. It's not like valgus good, valgus bad. It's like, why is it happening? On one of my lives a couple of weeks ago, I talked about dysfunction. So a lot of people will say that my glutes are dysfunctional or my squat has dysfunctional things in it. What is dysfunction? Like, your body just didn't wake up and go like, you know what, fuck this guy. Like, there's the reason. So if you can understand your dysfunction, if you can understand why it is happening, and it's a really hard thing to do. I don't have all the answers, that's for sure. But if you can understand why that movement is happening, what muscles are causing that to happen, what lengtation, like what positions are causing that to happen, then all of a sudden you can hopefully get a bit closer to the answer. So whether it's your ankle rolling in because it doesn't have the range, or it's your hip moving, from experience, I know that most people's valgus comes from a sagittal plane issue at the hip. So if you're rolling under or you're rolling forward, more so usually the second one, if you're losing that sagittal plane, that going into anterior tilt or posterior tilt of the hip,
I'm with you.
as soon as you move that joint, all the muscles that are attached to that, those bones, you change the position. So you've made them weaker or stronger from a lactation relationship point of view. So all of a sudden, your glute med problem, your weak glute meds, why are they weak? It's not because you're shit at training them. You're a smart dude who knows biomechanics, and you know, if I said to you, how do you train the glute meds? I'm sure you can give me 50 different exercises how to train the glute med. But why is it not doing its job during a squat? Why is it not being put into an optimal position through the full range of motion which you require in a squat? Is it because your ankle rolls in? Is it because your ankle's rolling out? Are you pushing too far? Is your stance a little bit too wide, too narrow? Are you losing your hips forward or back? What's causing those hips to roll forward or back? Is it a bracing issue? Is it a thing up top? Is your position of your bar, is your upper back tightness a bit shit? And when that starts to fall, the dominoes roll down and you lose your hips, and then you lose your knees, and it all. So you know what I mean?
I do.
It's a constant questioning.
It's
a
multifaceted.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, why is this shit happening? Understanding that dysfunction, understanding that movement pattern, and like I said, it's a rabbit hole. It's like Alice in Wonderland. It never ends. It never ends. But the better you can get at understanding it, the more answers you're going to have to that question.
But this is true, and I think that's why. And this is something else I want to ask and talk about as well, is
give people quickly before you go on.
No, go on.
To give people a more clear to that, because I feel like we've just opened up a bucket of worms and then run away. But it's usually going to be an axial problem. It's usually going to be a proximal problem, as in, like, if you can control your ribs and your hips, and with that your spine and all the muscles that go between them, and hold them in a good position during a squat or during a sprint or during a whatever, you're going to have a good time. So, like, proximal stability will give you the ability to move distally. So if you can control your hips, you can control your rib cage, you can control that internal pressures within that, your intra-abdominal pressure, intrathoracic pressure. You can control all that stuff and hold them in a good position during your movements, you'll have a good time. Your legs and your arms and all that shit, they'll do what they're told. That will solve most problems. Obviously, all these physios listening to this are going to be screaming and going like, "No, what about this?" There are other cases.
But again, don't miss the forest for the trees. Start with the big stuff.
Yeah, start with the big. And every time I get in my own little rabbit holes and think about why the fuck is my knee hurting,
It's usually something bigger, and then you go back to the basics.
I go and I chase it.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing these tiny things, and I'm like, man, why is this? And I'm like thinking about these tiny muscles, like, that tiny muscle on the back of my knee is the thing that's causing all my problems. But then I always find myself, I'm like, all right, go back to proximal, go back to what can I control my hips? Can I create more pressure? Can I do all that stuff? And it's most of the time the answer for most people. So hope that gives people a little bit more direction.
We'll put it this way, because again, maybe this is probably is more conversations for more times. But what other resources, courses, people would you recommend for the people listening now who want more? And obviously you've got your own stuff, but where would you start? Or where would you start to learn for people who want to know more about this? Like any specific courses you've done, books you've read, etc. That'd be a good time to mention this.
I've done a lot of books, as we've mentioned. There's a lot of like foundational books which I think are important. But I've gone over to America last year and I did Zac Cupples and Pat Davidson's courses, which are very biomechanics heavy courses. I think their whole model is ahead of the game. It has been for a few years. Everybody's starting to catch on now a little bit more, and you see it popping up a little bit more now. But their courses were great. Their online content is great. When it comes to biomechanics, they're the guys that I would look at. There are a million lists. I do consults. I've been doing consults with David Gray, who's an Irish fella who is fantastic and has done a bunch of courses on his own, but he helps me with my little biomechanics problems with my hips and my ribs. And it's annoying that every time I call him, it's like stuff that I knew, but he'll just give me like it's said in a different way and like make me do the same thing, but with like a different cue or a different exercise. I'm like, you motherfucker. And
It resonates.
I talked about this a little bit this morning, where it was your emotion can cloud your judgment sometimes. So working on yourself is a little bit harder than everything else. But
very much so.
Oh God. Yeah, there's a start. There's
No, well,
there's a
that's
few
the-
names.
well, that's the thing.
To dive into that rabbit hole.
Well, that's it, because the thing is, it is endless. But mate, if you get, we'll put some bones out there. People can, pick them up and do what they will with them.
Yeah, follow those YouTube links.
Exactly, and for guys, and for guys listening, we'll put it in below. But this is kind of an example of how, if you truly love the iron game and lifting, like there's always more to learn. And I'm always saying this to my clients, because the clients will look at you when you're training, they will look at other clients, and they will go, oh, I wish I could. And you're like, look, we've all been there. Like everyone's on their own journey. As long as you're progressing and you're enjoying the journey, like you're going to get there, but you're going to go on your own little journey. Be your own scientist, ask questions, be curious. Definitely recruit the help of other professionals, but at the same time, like we were saying before, don't take every one thing as gospel and go, well, now I've got this person's answer, that's it, I can stop learning. So, no. Just keep progressing. I mean, you know as well as I do, you got a lot more experience under the bar than me. You can come in, you go under the bar. You come in 1 week and shit. What? It's been great for so long. I thought I finally had it down, and then next minute, now the squat has just been fucking redesigned. Right, maybe not to the degree of it was back in the day, but it's just little things. And again, oftentimes it's just going back to basics. And fucking hell, I'm not fucking bracing, or I'm, my upper back tightness is not there, or man, you know what, my hips, I'm losing. So I encourage clients to video it. And when I'm teaching people, we have these anchors and these skills, and people are like, why are you so anal about this? I'm like, right, well, the way I was taught is not necessarily the right way, but there's a reason why we anchor and why we have a process, because if we do it every time, it becomes subconscious. So when we get in the rack, we're more likely to unconsciously, subconsciously do the right movement pattern rather than the wrong. So I'm like, and over time, you can change it, you can add your own in, but like, here's your basic structure. And run with it. Like, find what works for you. But initially, it's like we're saying, we have to have, we have to have some sort of playing field to start with. Otherwise, we have no structure, right? Sure. And then from there, we can build it out. So I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot from that, and that's something that, because I want to go on and do a lot more of these courses. And it's purely, people go, oh, why you want to add it to your CV? It's like, no, because I love this shit, and I want to find out for me. But I know by plugging those holes, I'm going to be a better coach for my clients, right? But it's like, you got to go do the work. You got to go and educate. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions in the industry is you get your Cert 3 and 4 and you're done. It's like, fuck no. That's like your P plates, man. Like, you need to be on the tools, in there. Yeah, exactly. You need to be upskilling. You need to be reading. You need to be living it, breathing it. If you truly are passionate and you want to be a good coach, like, the learning never stops. But fuck, like, it's fun.
Yeah.
You should be passionate about this shit, man.
Yeah, it annoys me how much I'm wrong. But like I said, every single year I look back on a year ago and I'm like, fuck, damn it, I could have got this person way better, or not way better, but I could have got them slightly better results, or fixed their hip pain a little bit quicker because of this thing that I've learnt. And it's frustrating, but it's the game, and it's a progression of all of us.
100%. And it's probably not a bad thing that you can look back and say that, because at least, all right, maybe you could, but at least you know that from that experience you're actually growing and moving in the right direction and making progress. Now, before you run out of juice on the old laptop here, and look, there's so many things, man. It's been a great combo. Perhaps we will need to do a round 2, and I know there's a
We're
couple
only
of other
15 minutes
things.
away, so we can...
We can do it, and now you're at the
weekly. I don't give a fuck.
That's it, mate. Maybe we do. Well, I've got some other ideas to run by you, actually. Perhaps we can build out in the academy. But before we wrap it up, a couple of rapid fire questions before the final one. Bit more fun, bit more personality. So the first one is, if you could choose a superpower, what would it be and why?
Fucking hell.
Oh,
I was looking for a fitnessy question.
Oh no, they're in there.
I'm going to stick on the on my there's so many I'm thinking of that it'd be like fucking awesome, but I'm just going to go for like super strength, just because that's what I do and I find it fun. So I just feel like,
do you know what's funny?
Rocking up to a powerlifting comp and just squatting a ton would be hilarious.
Well, the thing is though, no one's mentioned that. No one's even picked that yet. Yeah. Out of all the physique athletes, no one's been like super strength.
Yeah.
And correct me, guys, if I'm wrong, but
well,
no
what
one's
I do, and
picked
that's
that
what
yet.
I love. So I think it would be just fucking awesome.
It'd be funny to like just put like 1,000 kilos on and squat it for reps and be like,
change the world.
That's it. All right. What about your favorite meal food combo? mate, you got calories
Oh,
for
it
days. You got to
changes
get
all
it
the time because I'm on 6,000 calories. So
Well, that's what I mean.
you get over things quite quickly.
Exactly.
Even if it's the most delicious thing in the world, trust me, if you eat it enough times
Hedonic
consistently,
food scale.
far, you just get over it.
How-
People ask me all the time, they're like, fuck man, why don't you just slam pizza?
Well, it's funny because people
I'm
go,
like,
I'd love to
no.
have that. But I'm like, yeah, but if you were here, you would, that's it. See, it's a different problem. Grass is always greener.
I just give my own thing a little bit of a plug. I filmed, it would have been a few days ago now, but it's coming out today.
Yeah.
A YouTube video where me and Mickey are talking through my current plan, because I've just currently gone into
Yeah.
a pretty heavy surplus and about trying to gain weight, and I get more questions on this than anything else.
Yeah, no, plug it. Tell them,
so,
because we're going to do this at the end anyway. But
it'll be on our YouTube, Nexus Performance
Done.
YouTube channel.
Easy. And
today,
I'll put it in
as of the latest video.
I'll put it in the description, guys. So when you're watching this, maybe a week from now or 2 weeks from now, it's in there, and we'll plug it all in, which is good.
But I talk through the diet a lot on that, and we talk about how it can get a little bit just overeating shit.
Oh, yeah.
And how eating pizza or Macca's or high calorie shit each day doesn't actually work. But anyway, that's for that video.
Like, I guess just like if you had one last meal, like right now.
Well, I'm thinking about the stuff that I eat that's outside of my diet. So the stuff that I eat when I go out or whatever.
Yeah. You got any like
it's
favorite
stuff that
joints?
I can't make myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the stuff that I can cook a steak at home. So although I love to go out and get a juicy steak, mate, it's like something that I can do. So
within
stuff
your
like
grasp.
sushi, Thai, things like that. I love. I had Thai yesterday just there actually.
It's all right.
But that's stuff that I can't make myself. I think I find myself. That's the stuff I eat when I go out, and I have.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go for that.
Nice. No, that's good. What about, okay, so if you could invite one or two guests around a table, dead or alive, who would you choose to sit down with? That's a big question, because I know there's a lot of people that inspire you. But right now, off the bat, right now we'd have two people here, we'd have a coffee with them. Who would it be? Anyone, dead or alive?
Man, you want to go like. So on one side of it, I'm thinking like non-fitness, because but I'm not a political person, or I'm not like a history junkie or any of that shit. So there's no big like names like that people would probably go like, that's a better choice.
Yeah.
But I would
you
go
you.
the fitnessy
It's you.
people like that. I would go like the Dorians or someone like that. Or Ronnie or someone who's just like a fucking beast who just like
a genetic
and then I
anomaly.
can be like, hey mate, let's go to the gym and you can kill me, and and just, I don't know. I think I would just love that. And although they're still alive, and I could probably
but that's the thing, dead or
that
alive,
up
doesn't
at some
matter,
point.
There's a lot.
I would say
there's a lot to it.
Eddie Cohn, but he's still alive, and I see him nearly every year at Pro Raw, so it's a bit of a.
You're already on good terms.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It doesn't matter. Like, if that's someone that you look up to and he inspires you, man, like, fucking, that's the answer, right?
Yeah.
That's the answer.
No, the powerlifting world is a bit short on that, but yeah, someone like I'll rule out Ed, because like I said, I see him all the time. So someone like Bill Kazmaier, something like that.
Yeah.
And there are a few strongmen that come to mind that jump out, but this, yeah. Tough. Someone like Bill.
It's hard, isn't it?
Ronnie, someone like Dorian, someone that it'll definitely be trading.
Right. All right.
I don't know. I'm gonna go with that.
It's a good one. It's whatever and you asked this on a different day, it's a different thing. Now,
It is.
hopefully we've got enough juice for this. Might have to keep it swift, but it's the last question I ask all my guests. Can you identify one fear in your life? Could be big, could be small, something that resonates with you. What the fear was, how you overcame it, and what you learned from it, and then we'll quickly wrap it up with the plugs.
I'm not really overcoming it. It's something that I think everybody struggles with, but I still struggle with it all the time. And Mickey, if she was here, would be yelling it. But
and for people listening, Mickey's your partner. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Just
it would be like that imposter syndrome type thing.
Yeah.
I always struggle with putting out content and putting out other stuff, worrying that all these people that I've gone and done these courses with are going to judge or going to comment something negative, and I know I shouldn't. I've learned enough, and I've come a long way, far enough that I know I shouldn't be. But I still, to this day, suck at it, and really wish that I was more like I won't listen back to podcasts because I'll judge myself too much.
Yeah.
What I said, I won't look. I'll just usually I do like the. Just dump and run thing on Instagram, and that you'll just be like, post this shit and then just don't look at it.
Just get
type
out of
thing.
that, yeah.
So things like that I'll use as a tactic to get around it to some degree, but I still struggle with it a lot. So yeah, I haven't really overcome it yet, but I've definitely got a lot better over the last few years, and it's something that I'm still working on.
And well, look, it does. It takes time, and I think that's a really appropriate way to kind of finish up full circle, because that's what we spoke about before we got on, wasn't it? About like how everyone who is very, I think, they do well, they're genuine, they're authentic in the industry. I think this is one of the reasons that keeps them humble, because they're always humbled by their peers around them going, hey, you know what, like, maybe I'm not that good, or I'm not as good as this person, although we shouldn't compare. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I still add value. I'm doing my best. But again, like I said, we're all individuals. We're all different. The people, your audience, the reason why they like Will is because of who Will is. The way he talks, his nuances, perhaps the jokes you tell, the way you describe something. And that's all part and parcel of why we should all be doing something that gives us purpose, because we are going to attract different people. And someone might learn something from Eric, but they might not learn it from so-and-so, they might learn it from you, but they can't learn it from, just say, Jordan Shallow, and it's the accent, or it might be the cultural, they just resonate with you. I think that's important to consider.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's something I'm getting over, but it's why you'll notice on like a bunch of my content how I'll talk about me. So I'll be like, hey, when I fixed my shoulder problem, this is what I did. Because then if nobody can pull me up and go like, yeah, that's fucking bullshit, man.
Yeah,
this is how I would do it. I'm like, it's me. Fuck you.
Exactly.
So
I think we're all scared of that, though, like being called out.
A little bit.
I know.
Everybody is. I know, but it's something I struggle with, and I know it's a dumb thing though, because like when I think about it, I'm like, you're a fucking idiot.
but then, mate, you're human.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to overcome that.
As much as you have superhuman strength. Well, Will, look, mate, it's been a pleasure. I've loved the combo. I've learned a lot. I know the listeners would have taken a lot away from that, and I know we've sort of left them on a bit of a cliffhanger because there's a lot more, but perhaps we will do a lot more. So, guys, keep your eyes peeled. But before we go, where can the people find you? Where's the best places to keep up and learn more about you, and also if they want to jump in and get some education, possibly get some coaching from you as well? Yeah,
if you go to just the Instagram's the easiest place these days. So it's at WCROZ, at WCROZ, or at nexusperformance.aus. Those things, they're going to be the start of it. So like there'll be links on those to go to the website and to go through to find the inquiry and to find all that stuff. But if you do that, you'll find all of it eventually. So start there.
Awesome.
There is a YouTube, there is a website, but I'll let you go through the Instagram.
No, for sure, definitely. Well, look, guys, as always, I will put all those links in the show notes in the description. So if you're listening and watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is, the links are in descriptions. Make sure you follow along. A lot of knowledge from Will, and again, we will look at developing things and progressing over time. So perhaps some of the projects. So keep your eyes peeled for that. As always, guys, please, if it's safe to do so and you're not driving, leave a rating and a review on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. Make sure to subscribe for weekly videos, including podcasts. And as always, guys, until next time, stay fearless. Will, thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining me.
Love it.